Most Tinder dates are awkward at worst, but the three people in tonight's stories didn't just have a bad date. What happened to them in a moving car, behind a glowing phone screen, and inside a restaurant they thought was safe is something they will never fully get over. Let's get into it.
I was 27 when this happened, and at the time, I'd been single for maybe 5 months. My last relationship ended quietly. Not dramatically, not with cheating or screaming. We were just completely wrong for each other and dragged it out longer than we should have. When it finally ended, I was mostly just relieved. A coworker kept pushing me to get back on Tinder. He said sitting at home playing video games wasn't going to help anything. He wasn't wrong, so eventually I downloaded it again. Most of the matches went nowhere. Conversations died after 2 exchanges or felt forced from the very first message. Then I matched with a girl named Emily. Her profile seemed normal. A few selfies, a picture at a beach, one with a dog that looked like it resented being photographed. Her bio just said, "bad at small talk," which somehow felt more genuine than anything else I'd read on that app. We started messaging that same night. Unlike most people I'd matched with, she actually responded fast. The conversation flowed naturally. She was funny and sarcastic and easy to talk to. After 2 days, I asked if she wanted to meet up. That's when things started feeling slightly off. I suggested a bar downtown, public, usually crowded on weekends. She immediately said she hated crowded places. Then she suggested we just drive around somewhere instead. I read that message twice. It wasn't a red flag exactly, but it felt unusual. I told her maybe we could meet somewhere public first, and she apologized and explained she had really bad anxiety around groups of people. She sounded embarrassed about it.
Eventually, she asked if I could just pick her up and we'd figure out where to go from there. Looking back, I should have trusted my gut and canceled right there. But at the time, nothing about it seemed dangerous, just awkward. So on Friday night, I got in my car and drove to the address she sent me. The apartment complex was about 20 minutes outside downtown, in an area I didn't know well. It wasn't run down exactly, but it definitely wasn't nice either. Half the parking lot lights were burned out. There were shopping carts sitting near the dumpsters. I texted her when I arrived. About a minute later, she came outside wearing a black hoodie and jeans. She moved fast, almost like she didn't want to stand outside too long. When she got into the passenger seat, she smiled and said, "Thanks for picking me up." She looked like her pictures, mostly. Maybe a little older, but not drastically different. I asked where she wanted to go, and she shrugged. "Can we just drive for a little first?" Something about the way she said it made me uneasy immediately. And then I noticed she kept glancing behind us through the rear window, like she was watching for someone to pull into the parking lot.
I tried to make conversation while I drove, but she seemed distracted, completely different from how she'd been texting. I asked what she did for work, and she answered vaguely. Then, after maybe 30 seconds of silence, she suddenly asked, "Do you live alone?" That question put me on edge immediately. I laughed it off and said that was kind of a serial killer question. She smiled, but it looked forced. "Sorry, I just make awkward conversation when I'm nervous." I told myself she just had social anxiety, like she said, so I kept driving. A few minutes later, we stopped at a red light near a gas station. I glanced up at the rearview mirror without really thinking about it, and I noticed something dark near the floor behind my seat. At first, I thought it was a bag. Then the shape shifted. I looked again, and that's when I saw a hand. I felt this wave of adrenaline hit me so hard that my arms actually tingled. Somebody was crouched down behind my seat. I froze for a full second trying to process what I was seeing. Then Emily said, calmly and quietly, "Just keep driving." The way she said it scared me more than actually seeing the person. Not panicked, not nervous, just cold. I looked at the gas station beside us and made a decision in about half a second. The moment the light turned green, I jerked the wheel hard into the station entrance and leaned on the horn as hard as I could. Emily started screaming at me. The guy in the back suddenly lunged upward between the seats and grabbed at my shoulder. I slammed the brakes so hard, all three of us jolted forward.
People near the pump started turning toward the car. I threw the driver door open and ran toward the store entrance, yelling for help. The man climbed out of the back seat and took off running across the street without saying a word. Emily jumped out after him and sprinted in the opposite direction. The whole thing happened in maybe 10 seconds. A couple near the gas pumps came over while the cashier called police. By the time officers arrived, both of them were completely gone. I gave a statement for almost an hour. At the end of it, one of the officers asked me something that made my stomach drop. Did they ask where you lived? Apparently, there had been multiple similar reports over the previous couple of months. Fake dating profiles setting people up. They'd get the victim somewhere isolated first. The officer told me I probably did the right thing by drawing attention immediately, because most people freeze once the weapon comes out. I'd never actually seen a weapon, which meant there was a very real chance one had been in that backseat the entire time I was driving. I deleted Tinder that same night, and even now, years later, I still check my backseat every single time I get into my car after dark. Every single time. If you're enjoying these Tinder horror stories, leave a like on the video. It really helps the channel.
This happened about a year ago when I was 29, living in Chicago, and not handling being recently single particularly well. I wasn't depressed exactly, just stuck in a routine that felt like it was closing in around me. I was working remotely, ordering takeout too often, and barely talking to anyone outside of work calls. Eventually, I downloaded Tinder again, mostly out of boredom more than anything else. Most profiles blurred together, but one caught my attention immediately. Her name was Claire. Her pictures looked unusually natural for a dating app. No heavy filters, no forced poses, no group photos where you had to guess which person she was. She had shoulder-length brown hair and this calm, easy smile that made her look genuinely approachable. Her bio said only, "Night owl, bad at replying sometimes." Nothing about the profile felt fake. We matched late one night, around midnight. She messaged first, which was rare. The conversation felt easy right away. She was funny without trying too hard, and she responded with full sentences instead of one-word answers. But after a couple of days, small things started feeling slightly off. She would disappear randomly in the middle of conversations, not for 10 minutes, sometimes for 6 or 7 hours. Then she'd respond at 2 a.m. like no time had passed at all. Whenever I asked normal questions about her life, the answers felt incomplete. Where did she work? Mostly from home. What part of the city did she live in? Near downtown. Every answer gave me just enough to keep the conversation going, but nothing I could actually hold on to. I asked if she wanted to FaceTime sometime before we met up. She replied almost immediately. I hate video calls. I joked that she might secretly be a 50-year-old man. She replied, "Would that be disappointing?" I laughed it off. After a few more days, she mentioned a small independent theater downtown that played older films on weekends. She suggested we go together sometime. The only thing was, she only wanted to meet late, 11 p.m. on a Thursday. When I told her that was kinda late for a first date, she just said, "Less crowded." I was still going back and forth on whether to follow through when everything changed. The next day, I was in the office for a team meeting. During lunch, I was sitting with 2 coworkers and the conversation turned to dating apps. I pulled out my phone to show them Claire's profile because she seemed unusually normal compared to most people I'd matched with. The second my coworker Jason saw her face on the screen, his expression changed completely. He grabbed my wrist and looked closer, and the color drained out of his face. He asked quietly,
Where did you get these pictures? I told him. Tinder. We matched the night before. He kept staring at the phone. And then he said, That's my ex-girlfriend. A long pause. She died 2 years ago. I thought maybe it was just someone who looked similar. But Jason recognized every single photo immediately. And then he said something that made the whole table go quiet. One of the photos in the profile had never been posted publicly. Not on Instagram, not on Facebook, not anywhere online. Whoever had created that account had access to images that were never on the internet. Jason told me her real name was Natalie. She had died in a drunk driving accident while visiting family in Michigan. I opened Tinder to show him the messages. The account was already gone, unmatched. Every conversation had disappeared completely. Later that afternoon, Jason showed me old photos from his own Instagram. Same smile, same hair, same exact pictures. There was no question. It was her.
That night, I barely slept. Things got worse over the following days. I started getting calls late at night from restricted numbers. Every time I answered, nobody spoke. Just silence. Then the line would go dead. Then one night, around 1 a.m, I heard a car door shut outside my building. I looked out my apartment window. A dark sedan was parked across the street with its headlights off. I stood there watching it for about 30 seconds before it slowly drove away without turning its lights on. I told Jason everything. He admitted something he hadn't mentioned before. After Natalie died, her ex-boyfriend had taken control of her belongings and online accounts because her family lived out of state. Jason described him as extremely possessive when they were together, the kind of person who tracked her location and went through her phone. A detective took a report over the phone. He told us they couldn't prove who created the account, but that similar fake profiles had been used before to target people online. I asked him directly whether he thought I was in danger. He paused before answering. I think you should be careful about how much personal information you share online. That answer scared me more than if he had just said yes. I deleted every dating app I had that night. But even now, when I see headlights outside my window late at night, I still think about that profile. And I still wonder whether whoever was behind it ever figured out where I lived. If these stories are getting to you, the Airbnb horror stories I uploaded recently are probably even worse. Link is in the description.
I'll be honest. By the time this happened, I'd been on enough bad Tinder dates that my expectations were pretty low going in. I matched with a woman named Diane on a Thursday evening. Her profile was straightforward. A few photos, a short bio that mentioned hiking and old movies. Nothing that stood out. Our conversation moved at a comfortable pace over about 5 days. She was easy to talk to and didn't make things feel forced. She suggested we meet at an Italian place downtown. Public, well-lit, busy on weekends. Everything I looked for in a first meeting. I agreed without hesitating. The date itself went better than I expected. Diane was exactly who she appeared to be in her photos and messages. Warm, funny, actually engaged in the conversation. We talked for almost 2 hours, and neither of us reached for our phones once. I ordered a second drink without thinking about it, which for me is usually a sign things are going well. When the check came, we split it without any awkwardness. Outside the restaurant, we stood on the sidewalk for a few more minutes, finishing the conversation. I was already thinking about whether I'd ask to see her again. That's when she said something that caught me slightly off guard. She told me she hoped I wasn't offended, but she had a friend who liked to keep an eye on her during first dates, just as a safety measure. She explained it was something they'd started doing after a bad experience a couple of years ago. Her friend would sit somewhere nearby and check in by text throughout the evening. I told her that made complete sense. I'd heard of people doing that. It seemed like the responsible thing to do. She pointed to a woman sitting alone at the bar inside, visible through the restaurant window. The woman noticed us looking and gave a small wave. I waved back.
Then Diane said goodnight, told me she had a great time, and we went our separate ways. I walked home feeling genuinely good about the evening. I texted a friend that it had actually gone well for once. I went to sleep without thinking much more about it. 3 days later, Diane messaged me. I assumed it was about a second date. Instead, the message said she needed to tell me something, and she wasn't sure how to say it. She told me that her friend, the woman at the bar, had not just been keeping watch over the evening. She had been photographing me. Not a few pictures, hundreds. Close shots of my face, my hands, the food on my plate, my phone screen when I picked it up to check something, the direction I looked when I talked, the street outside through the window behind me. Diane had only found out because she borrowed her friend's phone the next day and saw the camera roll. When she confronted her about it, the friend said it was nothing, that she just liked to document things. But when Diane pushed harder, the story changed.
Her friend admitted she had been doing this with every man Diane met through dating apps for almost a year. She had photographs of at least a dozen different men, organized, dated, labeled by name, and she had been keeping records on each of them. Social media profiles, LinkedIn pages, in some cases, home addresses she had tracked down through public records. When Diane realized the full extent of what had been happening, she ended the friendship immediately and went to the police. I gave a statement the following week. The detective told me that while the photography itself existed in a legal gray area, the combination of covert documentation and organized personal records raised serious enough concerns that the case was being investigated further. I asked what the friend's motivation seemed to be. He told me they weren't certain yet. Then he told me something I wasn't prepared for. In the folder on her phone labeled with my name, there weren't just photographs from the dinner. There were also photographs taken outside my apartment building, taken the morning after the date. I had never told Diane where I lived. I had never mentioned my street, my neighborhood, my building. Nothing. I'd walked home alone, feeling completely fine about the evening. And someone had followed me, or found me, or both. I never found out exactly how. I still went on dates after that. I'm not the kind of person who lets one experience shut everything down. But I don't sit with my back to the room anymore. And I always notice now, even when I don't mean to, who else in the room is watching. 3 dates, 3 strangers, 3 situations none of them saw coming. Trust the feeling when something is off. It exists for a reason. New true horror stories every week right here. Subscribe so you never miss one. Drop your own experience in the comments below. Stay safe.